Thanks, Winifred. You and yours, 4 minutes past 12. Now on BBC Radio 4, the writer and editor of the music magazine Songlines explores the resonant story of a folk music revival that began in Eastern Europe 40 years ago. Transylvanian Blues. The Hungarian capital, Budapest, is one of Europe's great cities, majestically sited either side of the Danube. I've been coming here for over 30 years, and the city has changed dramatically, though the music, which is what's always drawn me back, has remained consistently strong. I'm here to see the folk band Muzsikas. They've been going 40 years, and the music they play has had an amazing impact on this country.
I had this sort of typical outsider's view of Hungarian music, which was based on cod, gypsy, restaurant music. And to hear what Marta Muzsikas were doing with it was quite a revelation.
That's record producer Joe Boyd, who's worked with Pink Floyd, Fairport Convention and Nick Drake. It was Joe that brought Muzsikas and singer Marta Sebestyén to audiences in Britain and America, realising that this was music with an international appeal. On this journey, we're going to hear Muzsikas in concert, in dance houses, in a school and at a big festival performance. But first, I want to catch them at home, close and intimate. So I'm heading to the house of Daniel Hamar, their leader and bass player.
We are lucky in one way that this culture, this music was preserved till our age. And the music is always a mystery which never glued to one culture, one nation. Just one example, that Mozart belongs only to the Austrians, of course not. Or Verdi only for the Italians. Or Beatles is only for the British people, of course not. And that's why, because their music it's much more international than the language. I think that this is a music that we inherited, is a part of the culture of the mankind. And when we see how the people react to this music from Hong Kong to Korea, from Japan to United States, I think that this music preserves something which can be useful for everybody all over the world.
Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, near me in summer evenings, there was a folk dance club. And you saw these people dancing in circles, and they were always very serious, kind of guys with pocket guards and girls in corduroy skirts and sandals and stuff like that. And they were making a real effort of it. And so it was the least sexy, least exciting thing you could possibly imagine. And then in a dance house, you saw 16-year-olds in miniskirts, not counting in their heads, just dancing. Great.
Joe Boyd brings an outsider's perspective, of course. Frugina Sape, who programmes the Sziget Festival, knows their significance at home in Hungary.
The Hungarian folk music revival and the dance house movement is the essential Hungarian culture.
I mean, I just loved the youth and the energy of it. I was kind of intrigued. I don't think I really grasped, what it meant at that point. It was just refreshing and kind of wonderful.
We are four musicians. The leading instrument is the violin. He plays the melody with lots of ornaments and melismas, and always different. If he plays 100 times, it's 100 different versions of the melody. And now
so the second ingredient.
The second ingredient is a plucked instrument, we call tambura. It's like a small banjo, but much smaller.
Okay, so now we have violin and tambura.
Third is a viola who plays the offbeat. He plays the harmony rhythmically, and he helps to make this dance music, it's more vivid.
Okay, part 4.
The part is the bass. The most important instrument, of course. All the others are, that gives the basement of the music.
Most of this repertoire is village dance music that was traditionally played at weddings and parties. This movement was a reaction against the state-supported choreographed fake law and an attempt to get back to the music's roots. It's something that didn't happen anywhere else in the old Eastern Bloc. Muzsikas and other groups went out to the rural areas to learn it from village musicians and brought it back to clubs in the city. Nowadays in Budapest, there's at least one dance house, as they call them, every night of the week. Fono is one of the most active.
I come here every Wednesday. They do a hour-and-a-half long course earlier, and then there's the dance party.
So you're American-born?
Yes, born in Michigan.
Living in Hungary?
Living in Hungary. I've been living here for just over 2 years now.
And what drew you into this scene?
I have been doing folk dancing since I was 10 years old, and I absolutely fell in love. I've fallen in love with the instruments, with the music, with the dancing, with the people, everything. This is home now.
Like dance house is like medication.
Dance house is like medication.
Medication for the soul, and for the body, and for the liver, and for everything else.
Me and Marci are really similar in this. I mean, we get a high off of the music, for instance, even if we don't dance necessarily. The music is something that feeds our soul.
But when you dance, it's a kind of feeling that you are out of time. Something eternal feeling, switched off from the daily work, daily things.
So it's a sort of escape.
Yes, it's a kind of ecstasy. Let's say ecstasy.
The folk music has such a beautiful history to it, and just everything it touches me.
The music of the dance house, or Tanzhaus, mostly comes from Transylvania, and it's not a mythical place of Dracula legend, but a part of neighbouring Romania, with a large Hungarian minority. It's very beautiful, and a place where traditional culture, both Hungarian and Romanian, survived like nowhere else in Europe. Muzsikas members Daniel and Peter still vividly remember their first trips.
I had a very old car, and it was very adventurous to travel by car to Transylvania at that time. Sometimes we had to wait 10 hours at the border, so they didn't like too much Hungarian tourists are going to Romania.
This music coming from there has a different sound compared to the folk music, what could be heard at that time from the radio.
And I've heard somebody woo, woo, woo. I didn't know what it was, and that was the bass. And I have heard the music, and I arrived to a big tent. I didn't want to be discovered, but it took only 2 minutes, and they discovered me. Everybody knew everybody in the village. Everybody was in national costume. And when they asked where I came from, and when I said from Budapest, oh, from Hungary, oh, come. They bring me to the wedding party, and after 2 minutes, I was sitting between the priest and the bride.
It was if we went back 100 years in the history, because in Transylvania remained something from the Baroque ages. the string quartet idea.
The contrast, the violence was so rhythmical. I didn't feel that why it is so rhythmical. And now later I understood that because it's not like a metronome, it's a little bit out of the symmetry. And two fiddlers was playing, improvising in an octave parallel for hours.
Somehow this kind of old-fashioned sound remained, not that romantic style which was played here in Hungary.
And it sounded like a trumpet, not like a violin. And this evening changed my life completely. I said that I want to learn this music.
And for us, we felt the same power in this Transylvanian instrumental music, what we loved in this modern rock music.
So that was the first shocking mating of an urban, educated, musically, classically educated young boy with a rural, strong tradition.
The easiest parallel to draw is the American South. What is American music? When you trace it back, you're talking about Southern music. You're talking about music of the American South. And I think that Transylvania represents that for Hungarian culture.
There's something wonderfully archaic and plaintive about the slow Transylvanian tunes. They have a real bluesy feeling. And that was intensified in the 70s and 80s when Hungarian culture in Ceausescu's Romania was under threat. There was a real fear that this world might simply disappear. The connection with Transylvania was significant because 40 years ago it was a taboo subject and the large Hungarian minority in Romania wasn't discussed in the official media. But the dance house movement was making it something that couldn't be ignored any longer. Hungarian journalist Bela Jaworski has written on rock and roll, Muzsikas, and the politics of the folk revival.
The folk dance movement was, for the Hungarians, very important to get some kind of national identity in the 70s. Because Hungary has a special situation here. After the First World War, this country lost 2/3 of its territory and 2/3 of its population. And in the 70s, the population of Hungary was about 10 million. And outside of the border lived about 5 million people. And that's why in the Eastern Bloc, the Hungary was the only state which had no national communist party. The national identity was politically sensitive.
The music and the dance was an art of a community, of a life of a community. And we would try to implant this type of community out from a village into a city.
On that musical level, we love the idea of this purity of culture and this heritage. But of course, on the political front, it translates into separatism and jingoism and even ethnic cleansing, if taken to extremes.
If you have a healthy national identity, it quickly leads to question the border. And that's why the government didn't support the national identity.
When you were playing this music and creating this dance house tradition in the 1970s, did that also have a political dimension?
Yes, of course. First of all, if there is a dictatorship, it's even very difficult to explain to my sons who have never experienced this kind of feeling. They want to control everything. And the dancers was always out of their control. They tried to categorize everything in 3 big categories. Supported, banned, or somehow accepted. So we were always of the edge of the ban and tolerated.
If you play folk music in Hungary in the 70s, it was a kind of political act. In the folk songs, there are a lot of metaphors about freedom, slavery, love and sex. And if you sing about the cold winds are blowing, it was resonating a different way in the youth.
When I said something in a stage from Transylvania and how the people are feeling there, I always see these three people in the audience who start to write. They were the secret police people who had to make the report.
Secret police would come to your concert?
Yes, surely, of course. Sometimes we know who are they. And sometimes they come so often, that we know from the first minute, they get involved in this music. They start to learn the music and the dance, and start to enjoy it. And that means when they are too much, they were somehow background. They disappeared. They became a new one. Yes, because they were, yes.
One of Joe Boyd's most vivid memories of how traditional music was given a political edge comes from seeing Muzsikas and their charismatic singer Marta Sebestyén in 1987. This was over 2 years before the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of Soviet power in the region.
Eddig vendég jól múlottál, ha tetszenik elindulnál, szaladj gazda kapjál botras, a vendégek indíts útra. Szaladj gazda kapjál botras, a vendégek indíts útra. Ettél ittál jól múlottál, ördögvigyen indulhatnál. Szaladj gazda kapjál botras, a vendégek indíts útra. Szaladj gazda kapjál botras, a vendégek indíts útra.
Marta and Muzsikas were doing a concert at the university, and there was not a particularly big room, but it was packed, and it was a dance company. The first half was all modern dance, but very good. In the second half, they came out dressed in folk costumes, and Marta and Muzsikas played music from a wedding, and they went through the dances of a wedding. They kind of, in a 45-minute set, conjured up the process of a wedding, and it was beautiful. And the last song, they start playing the song, and you could feel all around me, there was like a intake of breath, and people were startled and kind of gripped. As soon as the song ended, people just cheered and cheered and cheered.
And I see Joe was so pale, he was afraid that the police come and arrest us in the stage.
It was pretty daring what they did. They sang a song called The Unwelcome Guest, and the lyric basically is, you drank all the wine, you broke the glasses, you spoiled the party, now please leave. And clearly it was about the Russians.
There was only one record company in Hungary, and all the pop songs, all the things which are published in the record had to go through a committee who controlled. That's the censorship. But they say that all the folk songs are always come from the people, the class of the workers, the class of the peasants. So it's never of the upper class bourgeois people. So we could publish a record without being controlled. And funny, I remember that when we made this record, it's shockingly directly spoke about that we don't accept the system that we are living in. My friends, pop musicians, songwriters called me up. How did it happen that you could publish this? How did it happen?
This is a curious scene. Muzsikas are on stage in a local arts centre, playing for the next generation. It's a dance house for kids, toddlers really.
Well, I bring them here because I think that this is the best place to teach them traditional values and traditional music.
I have brought my two girls. One is 4-year-old, another is 1. It's part of our heritage. I grew up going to dancing houses like this, and I want to give them the same what I got.
My mother was bringing me in the same dance.
The same place?
Yeah, the same place when I was young, so it's a tradition in our family.
It is our inheritance, our Hungarian heritage, our tradition. And I think it's very important if you bring up your kids to be aware of their culture, because if they know their culture, that will make them be able to accept other cultures and to be open to other cultures as well.
This is a Budapest school gym with wall bars and ropes. There are about 200 kids aged 7 to 10 who've come for a whirlwind introduction to this musical culture that's only touched on in the curriculum.
We decided to visit 60 schools per year to make them an unconventional music lesson in which we show the instruments, in which we try to activize them, and we try to explain the importance of the music in a human being's life. And they were singing those songs that usually we know that they learn in a school. To involve them into the music, it's to create an atmosphere of a village wedding party. And of course the center in this kind of amusement is the music and the dance. And when the people are dancing and they are full with emotion, they start to shout to the dance. And we taught rhyme to the children and asked them to shout with us and rhythmically to the music.
Budapest Sziget Festival, one of the great music festivals of Europe. Last year they hosted Blur and Dizzy Rascal, but Fujina Sape also programmed a celebration of Muzsikas for their 40th anniversary.
I felt I wanted to show them how much I honor them, how important it is what they did and what they're still doing for the Hungarian folk music culture.
Tell me about some of the village musicians. You had singers from Transylvania.
3 old ladies who are really fantastic. They are fantastic singers, but they are not professionals, of course. And it seemed that these ladies are not, never had been such a big stage, but they were such charming old ladies. They were singing what they used to sing at home, and I think everybody understood why we want them to be in the stage, because that's the root, that's the real root where from we grown up. And that's their sound, and that's the character which changed our life, and changed not on ours, but such great musicians like Bartok. When he met this type of culture, it's completely changed his life. And it happened with us 70 years later, and we wanted to show why. What is the magnetism in this type of people?
It's clear that culturally and politically, Muzsikas and the dance house movement had a huge impact in Hungary. But what's their legacy today? Balázs Balog heads the Institute of Ethnography at the Academy of Sciences in Budapest.
The heritage, which is a key word. That's the reason why the dance house movement is still flourishing, actually after the political changes. Right now, the dance house movement is in a kind of expansion, so not only in the Carpathian Basin, but also in Slovakia, in Poland, and in Ukraine, and in Japan, in the United States, in Western Europe. It's getting more and more fashionable.
So it's become a sort of cultural export.
Yes, it is. It's a Hungary. How do you say that? Hungaricum, which is a kind of Hungarian specialty.
Back at the dance house in Fono, it's time for the men's dance, the legényes. These are real showpieces that men dance solo, drawing on traditional steps, but also adding their own innovations.
The man is the peacock, and he's trying to draw attention to all the unmarried women, and of course, if someone who's married tries to dance the legényes, it's kind of a faux pas, but obviously we're in an urban setting, so anybody's allowed to, and of course I have, yes.
Very sexy. Definitely.
Slapping their thighs and their knees and jumping and twisting.
It's very show-offish, and you have to be very confident to do it. You have to be confident enough to get up there in front of the musicians and start dancing. And these men are very talented. Have you ever tried any of this?
Yeah, but in the most simple way. It's much more difficult.
Very
than
difficult. I've tried. It's very difficult.
Dancing, Hungarian folk dancing is as exquisite as its language, as the Hungarian language itself.
So can you see somebody's character through their dance?
Oh, definitely. Especially during the couples dances. You want the guy that pays attention to the woman.
It's something that we can't live without, actually.
So, there's a lot packed into this dance house music. Sex, politics, and superb musicianship. I'm impressed by how vital and lively it still is for a new generation. And for Hungarians, it does contain that extra ingredient, a sense of identity.
I really feel that when we talk about Hungary, or when we want to explain our culture, our traditions, the easiest way is to go and to watch a Muzsikas concert, because then you understand everything. It is such deep music, it's so deeply rooted that even nowadays, in 2013, it is not old-fashioned.
Transylvania Blues was presented by Simon Broughton. It was a Falling Tree production for BBC Radio 4.